This is Pink Talks, the place where we discuss intersectionality and human rights. So, hi, welcome to another Pink Talk book club, poetry edition this time. My name is Katarina. I'm here with Emilia and Deborah. Hi.
Hello, everybody. Hello.
Hello.
Nice to be here.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So today we are talking about Adrienne Rich's diving into the wreck. So Adrienne, she was born in Baltimore in 1929. She finished her undergraduate in 51 in Radcliffe College, and in that year she was selected by W.H. Auden for her first prize and the Yale series of young poets. She got married in 53, but in the 60s she changed her view completely, and her poetry began to have new themes and subjects. uh, she began to write about the women's part in society, racism in the Vietnam War, and in 1973 she published the book Diving into the Wreck, which is the same name of the poem that we are going to talk about today. And she won a national book award with that book. She accepted the prize on behalf of all women, and she shared it with the rest of the nominees, which were Alice Walker and Audre Lorde. So she was from 1973. She began to be a part of the feminist movement and the movement of civil rights. So I didn't personally. I didn't know her work, but this poem that you suggested, she just blew my mind. So it's really, for me, it was like an eye opener, and I'm looking forward to reading more of her work. So yeah.
Yes, I think this poem is so full of meaning and symbolism and themes. It's amazing, no, to read it. It seems almost like that you are actually like going into the journey, with her. That like is this, I don't know, like adventurous scary journey of like made out of storytelling and abyss and everything, no, like, and also no, the theme of the identity, the theme of the curiosity, the vulnerability of curiosity, the and the symbols now that she takes with her. It's like, for me, maybe I'm spoiling a bit too much, but for me it's super interesting. It's really like adventurous reading.
Yeah, definitely. And it's like you said, a very like unique piece of poetry, and kind of like I relate to what you said of like you really feel like you go on this dive with her and you're like in it as well. So, and this uncomfortability of the journey as well, while at the same time being rewarding. It can be scary, but it's worth it. So yeah, super nice.
Yeah. I think that we can read it like on so many levels, like on a much larger level, about like uh, women's movement, and then at the personal level, like that's something that I don't know everybody, but at least all the women that I know always do this like deep dive on in some point of their life about who they are. So it was like I began to read this poem, and I was just like in shock, but a good shock. So I began like to write on paper to try to capture all my ideas, so I didn't forget anything. She just has a way with words. I think that, Deborah, you said it best. You go on a journey with her. You are actually diving with her. Yeah. And
Yeah.
Definitely.
Sorry, go, Nidia.
No, no, go, go, go. Yeah, you go first.
For me, it's like super interesting because like she's I don't know, like she starts like super calm, like with like after reading wait, I probably have to take the poem. um she says like, first having read the book of myths and loaded the camera and checked off the edge of the knife's blade, I put on my body armor of black rubber. And it's like you have the feeling that she's preparing for something, no, like. And also like this, the book of myth that at the end like compares also at the end, and the camera and the knife. And it's like it does like really give this idea of like thing that is like a story that you need to discover the truth about this story. And you are bringing with you a camera to record it, and nice to like really like dig into this story and to discover the truth. And then like what it was most interesting for me is that like she was stating, no, that she was alone into this dive. And it was not like with a crew of divers, or it was like she was completely alone and was like on, like for her own purpose. And this theme also, no, of the identity and being alone, like it actually like is like a leitmotif, I think, of the poem. Because then at the end, like she also says like, no, we don't belong to this book of myths, or something like that. And I don't remember the exact words, but actually no, like you can see like a strong feeling of identity, which is like either like individual identity as well as collective identity. But yeah, that was like my imagination, no? Because it's very very evocative as a poem. So like also like as you said, Katarina, like for me it was like my imagination was just like exploding. And yeah, like thinking about so many stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like I work on memory and image. So it was like a poem that, even in my work, it brought something new. So I think that this book of myths is like all the stuff that society says that women are or women should be, but actually we don't conform with it. I think that it's it's clear. So the camera, for me, for someone like me that works with image and photography, it's like she's trying to record a truth about this discovery that she's going to make with this deep dive. That I think I wrote something here about that, because she wants to find the truth. So this book of myth is not the truth about who she is. And I think in a more general way, uh, as women are in the collective. So it was like a beautiful image for me. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I think also just of this created myth book, and also how she talks about maps, and also what Deborah said, that she's going alone on this journey, but still kind of like she has the toolkits, or the narrator has the toolkits to kind of like know what to expect, but she really has to see it for themselves. to also kind of unpack it and maybe, like you said, also imagine it differently. And also, I do agree also that perhaps it's also like this inner journey of identity. And I think also with her, it's important to also that to take into consideration that she's also probably just also figuring her own, for example, sexuality, her own relationships to other norms of the society as well. Not only necessarily what it is to be a woman, but perhaps also what it means to be a woman who is queer, for example. But yeah, and it was also interesting to kind of see how she created this metaphor that the deeper you get, the more truth you will find, and it's dark and uncomfortable, but you will come out with new knowledge where you could imagine that like on the surface of the ocean where it's kind of perhaps calmer and lighter, that it would be easier to see these things, but in reality you have to just put on this rubber outfit and snorkels and awkward boots and go through it. So
Yes, and
I have
actually,
also like a really funny image in my head, like it must like you can also like see how the narrator looks like on this beach, like ready to go with the snorkel and just very clumsy in a way. Yeah.
yes, actually, like I do also imagine it as like clumsy and like, like a bit tense and clumsy also. No, while she dives, like she says like, ah, yeah, it's this color and then this color, and like she seems like, I don't know, it like brings me like a feeling of like overwhelming feeling of like what everything that is discovering, no? But at the end, it becomes like kind of a realization of the wreck. What is the wreck actually? What she really sees and stuff. So I think that like through the whole, well, through the poem, through the journey, like it's like super like intense struggle and like this clumsy manner of moving and seeing and looking at stuff, but also because it's very unknown, right? Like you don't know how to actually manage and how to deal with that environment. But then at the end, like I do think that there is like a resolving point, no? Which, well, um, it's like the point of truth for me, at least. Like I read it like in this slide.
Mm.
Yeah, but I think that's one thing that clumsiness that she has by beginning to walking to the sea and the dive also reflects a very powerful emotion that is vulnerability, because normally people think that vulnerability is a weakness, but actually I think it's like one of the biggest strong points that someone can have in their life, because through vulnerability you can like reach for an understanding that it's not only intellectual, but it's like an inner knowing, something that comes out of you from lived experience. So it's something, it's a knowledge, it's a much deeper knowledge. And I think that this dive that she makes, it's the same kind of knowledge that I'm talking about, a knowledge that is beyond the rational thought. So and you can only access this kind of knowledge through the strength of vulnerability, because if you are not capable of being vulnerable towards yourself or towards others, you cannot reach a deeper and a more emotional truth about yourself or about the world. So it was like refreshing seeing this vulnerability made like something to be celebrated, when normally society always tell us that we should not be vulnerable because it's a weakness. So yeah.
Mm. Totally agree. And also, I think it's very interesting that you bring that up, because it's also something that, like Deborah also said before about this going on this journey alone and this vulnerability, it's like you almost get this sense in the poem that when the narrator says, like, here in the ocean I can breathe, and breathing becomes easier, as if like you are vulnerable and alone, but perhaps also in that kind of journey that you're making on yourself, and you're being vulnerable and you're being alone and you have time to reflect, then also the pressure of the wreck, which is then all the norms and pressures and oppressions that are put on this diver, kind of perhaps get lifted more. So it's it's super super interesting, this kind of alone. And they're not like they're not very much allowed, because they have these maps of the other women before them, and putting this kind of like historical narrative of like, oh, there's been others before me and there will be others after me, but I just want to see it for myself. So it's very beautiful, I find.
Yes, I also know this theme, no, of I don't know, of oppression, no, of that you were saying in media, no, of oppression of women, of like that were cut off the book of meat and stuff, and like it's a bit like I do see like that, like she wants to analyze it and like to explore it and to discover why, and to discover like what is there, like um what it takes like to actually discover the truth and on this book of myths, no, and it's and all the damage that was done to this narrative, no, and to in this case like um to the historical oppression of women, no, so like also like if we read it like on on this perspective, like on this point of view, then like then it's like when the identity becomes also like a collective identity of something lost also, no, that is so down the sea, that you really need to go rescue somehow, no. So that is also like a super vivid image that comes, no, and even if it seems like dark and dangerous and stuff, like, well, she's showing that actually like there is somebody that is brave enough to show vulnerability even in the seek of discover.
Yeah, even when she refers, I think it's here when she writes, "This is the place, and I am here, the mermaid whose dark hair streams back, and the merman in his armored body." When she refers about that, she's going beyond gender. So I think that it's a poem that cisgender women can see themselves in, but also queer people. So because she actually talks about this, that this truth, it's not only about women's history, but it's about marginalized people. Because if we are going to see histories only made by like white men, so I'm a fan of history, so I'm since I was like little, I was always asking, but where are the women? Where are the black folk? Where's the story about them? So and this is in a superficial level, because I think that Deborah, it's you are on the spot about that collective memory and that collective identity that it's formed, but the mainstream idea that always push down these kinds of groups. So yeah, I think that her poem is beautiful on that regard. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, and like I was thinking the same thing exactly, that when the author talks about this merman, mermaid, and stating that I am her, or I am she, I am he, that indeed it must refer as well, perhaps also to the critique of like what kind of gendered binaries are created, and why probably that's also part of this wreck that's not taking into consideration everyone. And I think it's amplified when, in the end, when you get to the wreck and then you understand that in the book of myths there's nothing, and you're not there, and there's no names, and there's no images, and there's no nothing that would even document that that these people exist. That it's super powerful, I feel, also as a kind of ending note to this thing of like, we're here, we do these journeys, they exist, and that they shouldn't be erased.
Yes, and also no, in this, well, actually, in these two words, like you can read so many things. Also, like I was reading them like as the fact that like um as you were saying, no, before that, like this uh just binary classification, like probably like she doesn't fit in that, like she doesn't want to fit in this femininity, masculinity edges. Like there is so much more than that, no? And it's like kind of like the rebellion at the end of discovering the truth and telling the truth about that. Also, like uh it, like the fact that the poems is extended like to include queer people, that they also have been erased, or like from this book of myths, no, that like that everything was so simplified into this binarism of like, oh yeah, uh, uh, patriarchal march of history, you know, that does this, that just the word was made apparently just by men, and all the other were not included in this in history. It was like, actually, like I do see it, no, when like when she says like I'm both, like why, you know, like why do we have to think up like this? I don't want to think like this anymore, actually, because it's not um it's not true, first of all, and second, it's a really like it doesn't apport anything to the discovery.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's also, now that I was listening to also what you were saying, with the end of like kind of like showing that these names don't exist, and they're not in this book of myths, and that they're not, that it's empty, that perhaps it can be also a demonstration of these oppressive forces that have created this outcome, that they are not there even though they exist, but at the same time perhaps like a glimmer of hope that we're not here, but maybe we can create another way or a new way of existing, that next time someone comes to this wreck, maybe there's already some names, perhaps. But, or maybe we have to create a new book of myths altogether, that maybe this empty one at the end of the day is useless and we need to create a brand new one. But maybe.
I don't know why, but when I was reading this poem, and I think 2 days after I finished reading the poem for the first time, I was like reminding myself of that book by Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estés, Women Who Ran with the Wolves, because she, in that book, she creates like a bunch of archetypes, and she tells this fairy tale stories without the white male washing of them. So, and she begins to dissect the pieces of information that women try to pass to women, through the ages. So indeed, in that sense, she was like, I think that she was like trying to recreate this book of myths for women. So I think that's like a correlation, because I think that it's important for us to have like history by ourselves, because to know where we came from, who are our ancestors, what they did, especially women or queer folk, it's important. It's something that's important for us to create our identity, to assert ourselves as individuals. So yeah, so it was something that popped in my mind like 2 days after reading for the first time this poem. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. No, it's this. Well, also like always with the narrative also of the storytelling. No, there are stories. But I mean, of course, like we are, we function for like we go with stories. No, everything is a story, is a tale, it's a and it's like something that we perceive as like super powerful. That's how we learn about something, no? So like the fact of actually, picking like an instrument that is so powerful as like a story, and actually like create a myth. That's the thing that I really like about also this poem, no? It's like the book of myth is like, I do feel it's like so powerful, no, this book of myths, and it like it really like has so much power inside of it, and it's like creating, with the women that runs with wolves, creating a myth that is actually narrating another story that's super important, that's like super valuable, no, because actually like you, through the storytelling, like you're actually mm, telling something real, no, about the myth. So yeah, I really like always, no, like how actually then everything turns out into a story, uh, and it's like really like what we deal with every day with stories, no, and how is the narrative, no, that is behind that story, no. There was like also Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, she did this TED talk about the danger of one narrative, no? And she was also saying, like, like, I'm Nigerian and I'm a girl, and do you know, like, the narrative about Nigerian girls, what is like, oh, we are super poor and stuff, but actually I'm not like that. That's just one narrative among the many, many narratives that there are actually. But the problem is that we are taking into account just one narrative. And in this case, in the case of the poem, is like the book of myth.
Definitely. And I think like it's totally accurate. And this kind of like what kind of narrative you build also shapes in what kind of environment you are and what kind of narratives like get run with and which ones are forgotten. And I think that's also something, like you said, that the author of the poem really wants to highlight, that this shipwreck is like it's left alone at the bottom of the ocean, but there's treasures in them and stories. And I think with the camera having the responsibility to also document and gather that beautiful stories and narratives that have been kind of just left there in the darkness for people to kind of to do their own dive on. It's like a critique that, well, they need to be documented in order to have representation of all the different kind of narratives that people can have, and that they exist and that they should be prioritized and they should be made more visible, like with the camera, and like Anna also said, like with imagery and with all of this, it's super intertwined. So, and this book of myths also, like you mentioned. So yeah.
So, do you have any other thoughts about the poem that you want to share?
I think it was quite difficult as a poem. Like it took me quite a bit of time. Like I had to read it a couple of times to like get into it. It wasn't so straightforward for me. I had to really kind of do the journey of digging also into the poem in order to get to some form of a center of the poem for me as well. So it was a journey in itself also, I think, for me. How did you find it, the poem?
Yeah, exactly the same as you. Actually, I also learned, but that I thought like at the end, like I thought that was super beautiful because actually, like you're also like taking a journey, So first time that you read the poem is like you don't really like. I didn't really kept the stuff that they kept the second time and then the third time, and it actually like took me a bit, to like get into this. Um, but then like afterwards when I had the feeling that probably tomorrow I'm gonna read it again after what we said, and I'm gonna find like new stuff that I didn't put a focus on before, no. But yeah, there was like a moment in which I really like what images came into my mind of this that I was telling you before, like of the wreck and the journey and stuff. Like I thought that I got a bit, no, what was the sense of the poem, at least like for me. And you,
Yeah.
Katerina?
Yeah, for me also, it's not a linear poem because, uh, linear doesn't mean simple. For example, with the Maya Angelou, you read it for the first time and you identify yourself with so much. This, I think that the like you said, like it's a dive. You have like to peel the layers of the poem. So I took some time reading this poem also. Yeah. I had to like put it aside for a day or two and then return to it. So it was like pure pleasure for me, yeah. Because every time I read it, I just got more and more ideas about the meaning of the behind the words. And I like this kind of blue tint that the poem has because of the deep dive. It's not like a blue like in the summer in the beach. It's something like, yes, it's like a deep dive in the ocean. You have like so many layers of blue until you get to the bottom and it's like dark and you are shining light on him. So yeah, it was like a really good journey. I was like, I just said I want to read more poems from her because yeah.
Yes, she's super interesting, no, not straight to the point.
No, no.
It's something like completely different, but still it's a super nice reading, no, like it's very captivating. Like you get like super attracted by it, and you want at the end, like you really want like to know more and learn more, and it's that's also no the beauty of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no other considerations by my side.
So perhaps we finish this edition and we'll see you in the next one for more poems and books about feminist and intersectional topics, perhaps.
Yes, yes, with great pleasure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
So
thank you.
thank you
Thank
so much.
you.
Bye.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Pink Talks. Before we go, show some love for our favorite podcast by leaving us a comment and subscribe to the channel. We are Young Educators, a non-profit organization working on human rights, gender equality, and active citizenship. And this podcast was created with the support of our team. Ana Catarina Caldeira,
Laura Stafia,
Deborah Capoccia.